Hey friends, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. There are moments in life when everything looks fine from the outside. You might have built the life of your dreams. Maybe you've been doing all the right things, quote unquote. You may even feel grateful for what you have, like you have these feelings of gratitude, and yet something inside feels maybe a little restless or strangely empty, and you can't really figure out why. Just kind of this disconnection from meaning, this weird emptiness, like this isn't how I thought it would feel. And I'm beginning a series right now, and I want to begin this series by naming something pretty profound. These moments can feel confusing. They can feel disheartening, discouraging, disorienting, but they're also invitations. And in the language of myth and psychology, they are the calls to the journey, to the hero's journey. And this series that I'm starting right now, that you're getting part 1 of on the podcast, was born from my own deep remembering of that truth and from years of watching women trying to fix, quote, fix themselves and try to fix what wasn't ever really broken, right? They were on this journey to fix themselves, and that's not really what it was about. Really, it was just their bodies asking for initiation when they were seeing it as this invitation for optimization. So it was always about the optimizing versus this initiation versus just the journey. Much of the inspiration of this series comes from the work of psychologist and author Carol S. Pearson, particularly in her book called Awakening the Heroes Within. And if you don't have this book or have never read this book, I highly recommend it. But it explores the idea that each of us is living in our own hero's journey, whether we realize it or not. A lot of this is very subconscious unless you're listening to something like this and bringing it to the conscious, to a conscious level. But in myth, the hero's journey it's not about becoming somebody else. It's about remembering who you are. It's about leaving behind old identities, conditioned identities, borrowed identities, about descending into uncertainty and lack of clarity and returning with something true, something that brings life back into your inner world. And eventually that translates to the world around you. And so what she teaches in her book, what Carol teaches in her book so beautifully, I really, really can't recommend the book enough. It was recommended to me by a mentor of mine, and I just happened to revisit it lately, and I'm like, I gotta create something around this. But what she teaches so beautifully is that we're not guided on this hero's journey by just logic. In fact, I dare say that logic is really not a part of it at all. We try to logic our way through it, but we're really guided by archetypes, these inner guides that appear at different stages of our lives that teach us and challenge us. And really, they gift us something essential to kind of bring us into that next level of growth and evolution. And that's what I want to bring to you in this series, in this part 1 of the series that you'll get here on the podcast. Archetypes are living forces within us. They're patterns of energy, instinct, and wisdom that have existed across religions and cultures and myths and eras because they're rooted in the human experience itself. They show up when we're called to change. They show up when it's time to let go of something. They show up when courage is required. They show up when wisdom must be integrated. They show up when joy returns after grief and where clarity returns after uncertainty, when curiosity comes in after clarity, all these different stages of life. But most importantly, I think they show up in the body first before the mind understands, because as you'll see as we go through this series, you've been in these different stages, seasons, archetypes, and probably not on a conscious level. So they're going to show up in the body first before the mind understands, before we can put language around it, before we're making decisions based on, what archetype. It shows up in the body first, and it shows up usually physically. It's fatigue, it's restlessness, it's perhaps loss of motivation, or just this felt sense that the old way isn't working anymore. Like something's got to shift, something's got to change. All of these are signals that there's this archetypal shift that's underway. And so in the conventional world, in the modern world, we've been taught to override these signals or just pass them off as normal, right? We've talked about this so often on the show, how often we're taught to just bypass it or, oh yeah, it's just normal, or just override it. Like, I just got to keep going. I don't have time to deal with this. We're taught to stay in motion, to to remain productive, and essentially to measure our worth, our value by our output and by our achievement, by our success, quote unquote. But as Carol Pearson points out in her book, constant motion without meaning creates a particular kind of emptiness. She calls it movement without soul, which that resonates so much with me. And I know it resonates with so many of the women. Really, I would dare say all the women I work with, like that's why they're coming. It's like there's something not right. Like my body doesn't feel just right. Therefore, my life, my business, there's just something missing. And this is where the body becomes sacred, because the body really refuses to live a life forever because the soul won't allow it to. The soul is calling you to something greater, and it's going to get your attention through the body. And so the body becomes a place where suppressed truth comes to the surface, where outdated identities can dissolve, and where deeper values can start to come up to the surface. The body is the landscape of the hero's journey. Your body is giving you these signs, these signals, these symbols. Like this is the landscape of the hero's journey. And that's why I'm bringing this series to you, why I'm teaching this to you. I've worked with hundreds of women at this point through labs and symptoms and nervous system patterns and emotional healing and energetic recalibration, all of these things. And what I've seen time and time and time again is the same physical patterns appear at the same archetypal stages. And that's why I've chosen the ones that I'm bringing to you in this series, because these are the ones that we'll go through all of them. There's a lot more than the 5 I'm bringing you here, but these are the 5 that I find show up in this loop, in this spiral with high-performing women, and the same physical patterns show up at these same archetypal stages. The burnout doesn't just happen helter-skelter, right? The hormonal shifts, it's not happening in a vacuum. Fatigue often follows this long season of over-identification with one archetype, usually the warrior, which we'll talk about. But when we don't recognize the archetype that we're moving through, a lot of times we might misinterpret the body's signals as a problem or as something to fix, like I was saying earlier, instead of seeing them and understanding them as guidance, as the path forward, the path of growth to keep going. And so archetypes give us a way to ask better questions. And that's why I love using archetypes, because it's asking better questions like, what is being initiated in me right now? What is this phase asking me to release right now? How do I support my body in this season instead of forcing it into another one, instead of like rushing through the season to get to the other one? And I'm going to say this over and over again in this series, if you choose to keep going with the series with me. When I'm teaching about these archetypes, it's not about, let me just get through this one so I can get to the next one, because some of them might sound more exciting and sexier than the others. And so you're like, well, let me get through this one so I can get to the next one. It's not about that, because like I said before, you can't force your way in or out of them. Like this is just the natural evolution of your growth, of your initiation. It's about understanding and supporting your body in the season that you're in, and not forcing yourself or rushing yourself into another one. One of the most important things that I want to name here for this series is this, and I know I'll repeat this multiple times, but it's important. You're not going to move through these archetypes once. This is not like you graduate from one, you move to the next, and then that's it. Like you don't experience the others again. You're going to move through these over and over and over and over again and again and again. But it's at deeper levels of truth and responsibility. It's a spiral. And I've talked about this image of a spiral staircase before. I want to mention it again. But I heard this, I was given this image and with this mentor of mine of life being like a spiral, and we're like going up a spiral staircase. So if you think of a spiral staircase, you're going up and you're going around. And so, you experience something at a certain level, and then you're like, whew, okay, got through that. Let me keep going up the staircase. I'm going to keep going. But then you find like, wait, this thing that I experienced down there at this other level, I'm experiencing it again. But because it's a spiral, you're looking at it from a different vantage point, right? You have a different perspective this time. You have the wisdom and you're resourced than you were the first time. So experiencing it at this next level of the staircase is going to be a different experience than you did down below. And then you keep going up the staircase, and then it's continuing to spiral. Wait, this thing's coming back again, but I did it like all the way down there, but now I'm way up here, so I have a different experience this time. That's what it is like moving through the archetypes. It's a spiral. So each time you return to the archetype, to this season, you're going to bring in more awareness, and you're going to receive a more refined gift, wisdom in that particular time again, that you're there again. So I want you to keep that in mind, that this isn't like a grad, and sometimes too, there's a lot of overlap. And I think I'll mention that in multiple parts of this series, that there's overlap here. So it's not like you're in one and then that's it and you move to the next. A lot of times there's overlap and it's kind of maybe a couple at once and you kind of bounce back and forth. So it's not a straight line is what I'm trying to say. So I want you to keep that in mind. But how you see these 5 archetypes I'm going to walk you through is going to help you to be that resourced person, that resourced woman who can support herself in that particular season. So in this series, I'm going to be walking you through 5 archetypes that I find are especially active in the lives of high achieving, sensitive, soul-led, purpose-driven women. So here are the 5. The seeker, which I'm going to be talking about in this episode. This is the one who feels the pull towards something more before knowing what that is. Next is the warrior, and this is the one who knows how to act, how to strive, how to protect, how to endure, but then she also must learn when to rest. Then it's the fool. The fool is the one who learns to trust the unknown and loosen control. Next is the destroyer. This is the one who dismantles what can no longer continue, often through the body. Hey y'all, we'll get right back to the episode, but first let me ask you this. You've built a vision that others admire. And you've built something that you're really proud of. But behind the scenes, your body feels like it's lagging behind. It just can't quite catch up to your brilliance and your mission that you have. That late night second wind, the foggy mornings, the hormone shifts, the endless push and forcing. You can't strategize your way out of that. And you already know you don't need more supplements. You don't need another supplement stack. You also don't need another side hustle disguised as self-care, because nobody wants to have their health as a side hustle. This is about recalibrating your entire ecosystem. And that's why I created the Quantum Reset, a premium 3-month high-touch healing experience for visionary women who are ready to feel as powerful in their bodies as they do in their business. Inside, we decode your nervous system, your minerals, your hormones. We read your labs like the sacred text that it is, so we have actual answers. And then we pair that with deep energetic recalibration, subconscious release. We use gene keys, we use human design, and true embodied healing. This isn't about fixing burnout, because that's not what we're doing here. This is about becoming the woman whose body is powerful, whose body is completely electric, whose energy, clarity, radiance finally matches the size of her mission. If you know your success isn't meant to cost you your vitality, and you're ready for a science-backed, spirit-led reset, then the Quantum Reset is your invitation. So check the link in the show notes or send me a message on Instagram, and let's bring your body back online with your brilliance. Now, let's get back to the show. And then last is the sage. And this is the one who integrates the wisdom, who regulates the nervous system and leads from discernment from that embodied wisdom that she carries. So each one of these 5 I'm going to take you through carries a lesson, a shadow, and a gift. And each one offers a different kind of physical, emotional, and spiritual support. And that's what I want to take you through each of these. So I want this series to serve you as not just you gathering a bunch of information, because Lord knows we have enough of that and you don't need any more information. And honestly, I don't even want it to be a self-improvement thing or like a self-help thing. I want it to be about remembrance, about self-remembrance, about you coming back to you recognizing you, and you remembering you and how to support you. And so in each part of this series, we're going to explore how the archetype shows up emotionally, how it lives in the nervous system, how it influences your energy and your health, and then how to support yourself without bypassing the initiation that's offered in that archetype. So that being said, I want to move into this first part, this first episode about the seeker. And I find that every hero's journey begins the same way. And it's not with certainty, usually, not even really with confidence, but it's this dissatisfaction that comes up that's saying, this little voice that says there's more. And that is the voice of the seeker. That voice belongs to the seeker, telling you that there's more available to you. And if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that the seeker either has already been walking beside you, or maybe that's where you are right now. And that's where I want to begin with the seeker. And I want to start all of these parts by giving you just a little story about my own journey, just so you can have words to see how it plays out in the human experience. So I want to share a little bit about and like I said before, you're never going to go through these just one time. So it's not like, this is the only time the seeker showed up in my life. This is not that. This is a very clear remembering of when the seeker arrived in my life. So I just want to tell this part. So the first time I can clearly remember, of course, didn't know it at the time. I didn't have the language for it, but remember now, the seeker arriving in my life was when I was about 25 years old, and it was right after my divorce. And at the time, it had felt like the rug had just been pulled out from under me, like just completely. My world was crashing down. My identity was shaken. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know. I was not in a good mindset. And I mean, honestly, I was in a victim mindset. Like, why did this happen to me? Why did everything fall apart? I'm a good person, blah, 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 all the things, And at some point, I was able to step far enough outside of myself to take a bird's eye view of what was happening. I've mentioned this story in the podcast before, but it was a friend at the time who basically kind of shook me out of it. Like, your identity is tied up in this, who was your husband, and you need to figure out who you are without him, because this is over, right? So I was able to kind of, okay, let me step back and take a bird's eye view. And I realized something that I hadn't been able to see before. I realized I had been living in this really small box, a version of life and a version of me that looked acceptable, and it looked responsible, and it looked nice and successful enough. And as painful as the divorce was and everything that came with that, I felt like, after kind of letting the dust settle, I felt like it was giving me permission to break out of that box. I remember having this deep knowing that I was meant for more, that I was meant for something bigger. And I couldn't exactly explain what that meant. Like, I couldn't put language to it. And I couldn't even say what I was meant for. Like, I don't know. I just had the feeling. I had this feeling. And I knew that there was something more for me, something bigger. And that feeling really set me on a trajectory that I really couldn't have predicted, into my deepest personal growth, into learning how to love my body again, into a spiritual awakening, into the pursuit of a deeper truth that I knew my soul was calling me into, was calling me towards. And at the time, I didn't know the word seeker. I didn't know about archetypes. I didn't have the words for it, but I knew something in me was searching. And it's not like this futile search for more out of scarcity and dissatisfaction. I want to make that clear. But it's this deeper knowing for me, and what the seeker is calling you to, it's this deeper knowing that you're meant for more. And there's a difference. There's a difference there. And looking back, I can see that my body was actually the first place the seeker showed up. And again, hindsight is 2020. Didn't see it at the time, but there was quite a long period where I was getting sick regularly. And despite, being the healthy eater and working out all the time, I was constantly getting injured. My energy wasn't nearly as strong as I told myself it was. My periods were normal, but only because I was on birth control. And if I tried to come off, it was like my whole body was just like unraveled, but I normalized all of it. And what shifted first wasn't really my work or my ambition. That came later, which I'll talk about later, but it was my relationship with food and movement in my body. So as I kind of went on this journey, I started actually eating to fuel my body. I started moving for the joy of movement, not as punishment or to keep my body in submission, which was what I did for a long time. And only later really did this seeker return to teach me something deeper about my work and my drive, which again, we'll get to later, another part of the series. Because I still deeply identified with productivity, with achievement, with proving my worth through doing, I was living in the shadow of the seeker, which is excessive ambition and perfectionism and pride and this kind of addictive relationship with work. And so even though I was successful, it lacked soul, that movement without soul that Carol Pearson talks about in the book. That's how it felt for me. It felt a little bit empty. And at first I thought this was like purely a physical problem because, I ran the labs and I saw my adrenals were shot. My gut was struggling. My hormones were a mess. And so I knew how to do. I knew what to do. I did what I knew how to do, and that was to optimize. Okay, it's my body, it's my physical body. Let's do the protocols, the supplements, the holistic things, all the hacks, right? I told myself if I could just fix my body, then everything would fall into place, everything would be fine, because it's just a physical thing. I just need to fix my body. But what I didn't realize was that I had just kind of shifted into this new kind of hustle, one that looked more conscious and more maybe intentional, but it was still driven by the same underlying patterns. There was no curiosity yet about why my ambition felt so compulsive. there was no willingness to sit with a deeper question, like why was I in this pattern? So the seeker was there, she was present, but maybe a little bit misunderstood. And so there was two major turning points that kind of helped me slow down enough to finally listen. The first was my introduction to human design. This was completely life-changing for me. Understanding myself at this energetic level explained so much of the resistance that I had been feeling for years. And I realized that I had been operating in this very mechanical, masculine, externally driven way, not in soul aligned ways. The second turning point was becoming a mom when I started having kids. And it really became impossible to ignore. I realized that I was enslaved to my work. Even though I was the boss, I control my schedule. It's just me and me, but I was a slave to my work. And I knew that I couldn't show up for my family fully if I was still operating this way. And I also knew that I didn't want to pass these patterns down to my kids. I didn't want my kids to see that this is how you do things. That was the example I was given with my dad, which I'll get to in another part of the episode of the series. But I didn't want to pass that down to my kids. I didn't want them to think that the only way to get what you wanted was by burning yourself into the ground and working sun up, sundown. So that was when a different question came up for me. Was I doing all of this to prove something, or was I responding to a true soul calling? And that was the question that changed everything. Because looking back, I can see that this was the seeker phase weaving through my life again and again. It was kind of popping up and then I go into the shadows and then popping up and go into the shadows. The constant thread was this deep knowing that I was meant for more, that there was this deeper truth my soul was calling me towards. And what I couldn't see at the time was that the discomfort and the frustration I was feeling at the time was this initiation into something more. Like I had the knowing that my soul was calling me forward into something more, but there's got to be this initiation. It's not just like, oh, poof, it happens out of thin air. So it was me breaking out of the box that I had put myself in. It was me becoming the version of me that I hadn't fully met yet. And so if you're in that place, that kind of in between place right now where you don't have all the answers, but you feel the pull, this is preparation for you. And it's the seeker doing exactly what she's meant to do. And I want to talk about the seeker today as just a phase for you to understand. As I said in the beginning, I don't want this to be, well, let me fix myself and let me figure it out so I can get out of this phase. It's not about that. It's not the conversation I want to have. It's about understanding the phase and supporting yourself in it because it's essential. Before your life force changes, the seeker arrives first. The seeker is there to help you see, okay, there's something more for me. So the seeker arrives when old identities no longer fit, when motivation drops, when curiosity replaces certainty. And this is often the first archetype that women meet before burnout, not after, strangely enough, which we'll get to in the second part of this series. But sometimes this feels like things that we normalize. It's feeling off, right? And that's so common with the women. I just feel off. Something just feels off. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that you're sick. You just feel off. Something's off. It's not normal. It's not optimal. It might feel like questioning routines or ways of doing things that used to work. And you're like, why do these not feel right anymore? It might feel like wanting something different, but then not knowing what it is yet. And that was what it was for me. As I explained in my story, I felt like this knowing of something more is available for me. I don't know what that is yet. I don't even know what that means. Now, the shadow, on the other hand, the shadow of the seeker is this constant searching. A lot of times it looks like overconsumption of information. And that was me for a long time, this pattern of just taking in so much information. And it's this constant search. It's looking out for clarity. The body is trying to generate inwardly. So it's looking outside for the answers when instead of going in. And so the gift of the seeker is this deep intuition to go inward. The seeking is an inward seeking. It's not an outward seeking. So it's this deep intuition. It's this sensitivity to misalignment and really recognizing that discernment, like this just doesn't feel right for me anymore. This just doesn't feel aligned for me anymore. And it's usually the beginning of this embodied discernment. Like I feel in my body, I can feel in my body what's right and what's not right for me anymore. And I don't know what that means after that, but I can feel like I know what's not right for me anymore. When we talk about how the seeker shows up in the body physically, there are a lot of common body signals in the seeker phase that I find are pretty common across the women that I work with. And persistent fatigue is a really big one. And it's persistent fatigue specifically when you're, quote, doing all the right things, right? And that was me, right? I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating all the healthy things. I'm eating clean. I'm doing the workouts. I'm taking the supplements. So, but that persistent fatigue is still there because there's energy leaks there. There are things that are misaligned that are zapping your life force energy. So this fatigue is not about the food and the working out and all that. Another common one, brain fog or lack of clarity. This fog kind of rolls in and it does bring this lack of clarity, and it brings this sometimes confusion and all the things that go with that, because it's hard to kind of see the next step or what's next. But I know it's not this. I know there's something bigger than this. Sometimes it might look like hormonal shifts, like these subtle hormonal things start to shift. Like maybe your cycles all of a sudden are different. Like, oh, they were really regular and now they're maybe a little erratic or different. Maybe they're unpredictable. Maybe your hormones just feel off. Like there's moodiness, there's mood swings, there's energy dips, there's your blood sugar, but just these kind of hormonal shifts start to change where you're like, okay, this wasn't there before. Maybe it feels like a restlessness or a dissatisfaction with things you've been doing before, like your workouts, your food, your routines. All of a sudden it's like, oh, like this doesn't feel fun anymore. This doesn't feel good anymore. And a lot of times too, your nervous system is kind of on high alert. And so you might have this heightened sensitivity to stress or noise or stimulation. So you're kind of in this hypervigilant state. Your nervous system is scanning because you're like, I know something's not right, but I don't know exactly what. So through a nervous system lens, you're kind of hovering between this sympathetic activation and low-grade exhaustion. Like you're not fully in full-on, full-blown burnout at this point, but you're somewhere between this constant sympathetic activation, this like fight or flight activation, and then low-grade exhaustion where it's like, okay, well now I just feel tired. So the body is really just asking for more listening at this point. Like what is it trying to tell me? And this is a mistake I see women make, why so many women get stuck here. And as I mentioned in the intro here, when we get stuck and we over-identify with one particular archetype is when it really starts to be a drain on our energy, because we're not meant to stay in one place. That's not why we're here as human beings. We're here to evolve and grow. So we're not meant to stay in one place for too long. And why so many women get stuck here is they treat the seeker phase as something to just optimize out of. Let me just keep optimizing things and eventually I'll get out of it. They start to add more protocols and let me do more. Let me do more to get out of this. Like you're feeling the kind of dissatisfaction, the kind of lack of clarity. You're feeling, quote, off. And maybe you feel like, okay, my nervous system is like, oh, this heightened sensitivity, like you're feeling all the things that I mentioned before. And so naturally it's like, okay, well, let me optimize things. Let me optimize my diet. Let me optimize my detox protocol. Let me optimize my supplements, my workouts, right? It's adding more things. It's adding more protocols, looking for the right plan instead of asking the right questions. Because the right questions is, what do I need to do more of? That's not the right question. When the seeker is ignored, when the seeker is tapping at your heart and it's asking you to listen, and when it's ignored, the body is going to escalate. Because as I said, the body, it's not going to lie for too long because the soul is going to use the body to get your attention. So the body is going to escalate. And this is often how women slide into warrior overdrive, which is we're going to get to in the next part, or destroyer, which is kind of a few after that. Like they end up sliding into these other archetypes, but they immediately slide into the shadow part of it, where then their body is in full on like collapse, burnout. So it really is about asking the right questions. Like first of all, what is my body trying to tell me? It's probably telling you to slow down so you can listen to what your soul, your intuition, that inner voice is trying to tell you. What is my soul, my intuition trying to tell me? Like, what is this thing, right? I know I'm meant for more. What does that mean for me? So if you were to feel the seeker in the body, the seeker usually is going to show up as a restlessness, as this kind of quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that something is off, but maybe you can't name it yet. So maybe it feels like a tension in your chest. Maybe it feels like low-grade anxiety or agitation. Maybe it feels like difficulty resting or settling or slowing down or stopping. Maybe it feels like a pull to keep going, keep learning, keep searching, this yearning for more. And all of this is happening because something inside you is waking up. The seeker lives in the longing. The seeker is longing for more. So if you were to feel into your body, because this is the thing with all of these archetypes, I don't want you to just get this as like an intellectual understanding. I want you to feel it in your body. So I want you to feel this. If you were to feel in your body If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, this sounds familiar, then this is where the seeker lives. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make in this phase is trying to quiet down the longing or silence it instead of actually listening to it. Maybe it feels frustrating to always have this longing for more where you're like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I don't know what's next. I don't know the next step. I don't know. It's that I don't know can be a really scary place to be. So I think sometimes we silence it or push it down, or it looks like we just kind of dim our light a little bit. We dim ourselves down a little bit and think, well, I can't be that big, or I can't be that bold, or I can't stand out that much. So this longing is silly. It seems silly. I can't be that big. Those dreams, that desire, that longing is too much. It's too big. So it's this fear of being too much, too big, which a lot of women have. So we silence it instead of listening to it. We numb it. We distract ourselves from it. We optimize our way out of it, thinking this longing is, oh no, it just has to be something I need to optimize in my routine or my productivity or whatever. Or we just tell ourselves to be grateful and move on. Just be grateful for what you have and move on, instead of listening to the longing and to listen to what your soul is trying to tell you, what the seeker is trying to tell you. But really, that's the seeker needs space. So in this phase, what your body is actually asking for is more quiet, more time to reflect, less constant output and less constant input, like what you're putting in. Be careful with what you're putting in. That's going to cloud a lot of that connection to what your intuition or soul is trying to tell you. It's asking for gentler rhythms and cycles, like actually honoring your rhythms and your cycles, whether that's hormonal cycles and rhythms, your energetic, creative cycles or rhythms, depending on your human design. It's also asking for nourishment that feels actually nourishing, nourishment that feels grounding rather than stimulating. So avoiding things that are hyper stimulating. This isn't the season for doing more, pushing more, working harder. It's really the season for asking better questions. Instead of asking, what should I do next? Try asking questions like, what feels true right now? What feels expansive, even if it scares me? What feels heavy? What feels restrictive? Like asking yourself those kind of questions to feel what feels expansive versus restrictive or constricting in the body. That's where the answers are. Your body is going to let you know. If you're asking questions and your body feels like a heaviness, a restriction, a contraction, this is a no. If your body feels a lightness, an expansive, like an uplift about it, that's a yes. Like asking those questions where you can feel into your body those feelings. Let those questions in your body lead you to what to do next. So from a physical perspective, the seeker often benefits from more regulation, less stimulation. So think slower, more intuitive movement maybe. Maybe you set aside some of the higher intensity workouts and do some more lower intensity workouts. Maybe you find practices that help you feel inside your body instead of performing with it. So things like those mind-body exercises, right? Like yoga, Pilates, maybe there's, meditation, those kind of things. It's not a performative thing. It's not a competitive thing, but it's a feeling inside my body thing, connecting my mind and my body, that kind of thing. Also with regulation comes balance, right? So we want to eat for balance, blood sugar balance, consistency, steadiness, keeping the blood sugar regular. It's going to help keep your hormones. It's all about safety, right? That's what the seeker is asking for. The seeker is asking for safety because inside that safety is where you're going to get the clarity for some of the answers that you're looking for. Now, if we're looking at the shadow of the seeker, kind of going to the other side where I lived a long time in the shadow of the seeker, oftentimes it looks like this endless self-improvement without time for the integration and for the embodiment. Now, there's nothing wrong with self-improvement. That's why you're listening to podcasts like this, right? It's for self-improvement. But if it's that constant search it's the constant input of information, that constant seeking and searching. And here's the other thing. I say this all the time. With anything and everything, it's not what you do, it's who you are being when you do it. It's the energy that you're doing it in. So if I'm doing the self-improvement for just that, it's enlightening. I'm learning, I'm expanding my mind, I'm learning new strategies. Great. If it's self-improvement because I need to find the thing, I am listening to this, I need to find the thing, this one thing, this is going to be the answer. This has helped me find the answer. Or it's because you're too afraid to sit in the silence and you need the noise and you need something always going on in your head, right? There's differences there. So if it's this endless self-improvement without the time for integration and embodiment, without the time to actually put into practice what I'm learning. It's the shadow side of the seeker. I'm seeking, but it's this kind of futile seeking. But also might look like chasing the next modality, the next mentor, the next answer. Like this was a big one for me. I'm going to get to this one in the last part. Some of what that looked like for me, just constantly chasing the next thing. It might look like mistaking information for transformation. I'm getting more information. This is what's transforming me. No, it's not. Getting more information is not transforming you. You can take the information, you've got to integrate it into your body, into your life. You have to embody it. You have to live it out. That transformation doesn't come from just learning things. The shadow might also look like confusing movement with meaning. I'm making the moves, I'm doing the thing, I'm productive. Going back to what Carol Pearson said about movement without soul. Just moving and taking action, being productive doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it has meaning. So if you're confusing movement with meaning, this is the shadow side of the seeker. So if you notice yourself, this constant searching, this constant seeking, but never actually arriving, this is the seeker asking you to slow down. We got to slow down. It's that whole concept of slowing down to speed up, because the antidote to the seeker shadow, to all of those shadow parts I just talked about, is presence. And in order to build that presence, there has to be a slowdown. Right? It's not finding the answers. It's not the search for the answers. There's a slowdown that has to happen, a quiet that has to happen. It's presence. So it's not necessarily about figuring everything out in this phase. It's just about staying connected to your body while the truth unfolds and having that patience, that presence in the process. So I want to take you through a little bit of a practice as we start to wrap up this episode and talk about the next parts of this series. And if you have a space right now, maybe you come back to this if you're like doing something, if you're multitasking right now, or if you're taking a walk or you're sitting somewhere, this would be a good time to do it. But if you just take a breath and kind of feel into your body and just kind of connect with your body, your feet on the ground, the weight of your body being held in whatever surface you're on. And if you were to put your hands on your body somewhere, so maybe it's hands on your heart, maybe it's a hand on your chest and on your belly, maybe it's somewhere else, maybe it's giving yourself a hug, wrapping your hands or your arms around yourself. But if you were to put your hands on your body and ask, not to get an answer, but just to listen, what am I longing for right now? What am I truly longing for right now? What feels too small? Or where have I made it myself or my longings too small? And what is quietly calling me forward? So if you were to feel into those without needing words, maybe you feel an emotions, multiple emotions. Maybe you feel a sensation in your body. Your body is giving you a sign or a signal. And maybe you feel nothing at all. There's no right or wrong here. But this is you inviting that seeker and just inviting the honesty that the seeker wants. It's not about the clarity and the definitive answers. It's just honesty and allowing yourself time to get there. So if you were to give yourself some things to contemplate, and if you were listening to this inside the full series, you can go to the downloads section and download. There's a little PDF to go with this with some prompts and some contemplations and some things to take with you in this phase. But just a few to give you right now if you're listening on the podcast. Where in my life do I feel that quiet pull towards something more aligned? What no longer energizes me the way that it used to? And what does my body want me to listen to before I try to change anything? Take some time with those and just feel into, maybe it will take you some time to feel into the answers, but take some time and see what comes up for you. And I know if you're in the seeker phase right now, I know sometimes it can feel uncomfortable because you might feel like you're leaving something behind or you've left something behind, but then you also haven't really arrived anywhere new yet. So you're kind of can be in this in between. And I will say that there is this shows up in other archetypes as well. When we get to the Fool, we'll talk about that too, kind of this in between. It's a different in between, but it's kind of this in between space. And I want you to know that when you're in these sort of in between spaces, you're at a threshold. This is you being reoriented. This is a space that's preparing you for something that's next. This is a place that's initiating you into this next level version of you, into this next layer of wisdom that's being imparted to you. And the seeker is here to teach us how to listen before we leap and how to feel in our bodies, how to feel before we decide, and to really honor our longings, the longings that we have without turning it into pressure or obligation or urgency or anything like that. It's honoring the longings within us to know that when she's supported, when she's resourced, she's the guide that leads us towards the truth and not to burnout. So perhaps you could go straight from the seeker to the fool. Maybe you skip over the warrior archetype in this pattern sometimes. Maybe you don't have to go through the warrior to have to push and fight and force. Maybe you can go straight to the next iteration, and that maybe it's the fool or something else. And honestly, the order really doesn't matter because it's not going to always be in this order. But the point is, when she's supported, the seeker, supported and resourced, she can lead us to the truth without having to force, without the pressure, without the burnout. And so this is really about staying present long enough for the deeper answer to find you. It's not about you doing all the searching and the seeking. If you find that presence I was talking about and stay resourced and really listen to your body and give your body that space that it's asking for, all those ways I mentioned before, how to support your body in this phase, if you're able to support yourself in that way, the answers will find you. It's not even about searching for them. They'll find you and they'll land with you. And so the seeker is the first initiation. This isn't something to rush or bypass through. It's just about the support inside of it. And this is just the first phase, the first archetype, the first step here. This episode is one in this larger series where I'm going to explore the other 4 archetypes I'm bringing in here and how these 4 show up in the body. And in each archetype is teaching us a different way of caring for ourselves. And that's really one of the main pieces I want to bring forward is all of these archetypes show up differently, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so it requires a different way of caring for ourselves within each. And I want to bring this deeper exploration of the archetypes that are going to show up the most often for you and how to support yourself within those. The next archetype we're talking about is the warrior in this series. And the warrior is the one who pushes forward and she organizes and she does the thing and she's strong and she's capable and she knows how to decide and endure and she's got the tenacity and the resilience and all of those things. But there are some big shadow parts of the warrior that lead us straight into burnout. And that was my experience with the warrior. And so if you want to go deeper into this, I invite you to go to the show notes below and you can go find the link to get into the full 5-part series of the body as archetype, to go through all of these phases where I'll dive into all the parts of these, how to support yourself in these, what it means. There's PDFs to accompany all of these. So you'll have a little PDF with things to contemplate, with journal prompts. And the one I was talking about for this specific part about the seeker, you can find that inside as well. And there's just some ways to go deeper inside the whole full series. So I encourage you to do that because these, as I mentioned in the beginning, archetypes, these 5 that I pulled out of the book, these are the ones that show up the most, and they reoccur the most. These are the ones we're going to go through again and again and again and again. Not that we don't go through the others that I didn't include here, but for high achieving women, I know because of how many women I've worked with and seen them in these different stages, these are the ones that we go through the most. And I think that if you're a soul-led woman, if you're a soul-driven woman, a purpose-driven woman, then the sage, which is the last part of this series, is kind of the wise one, right? But the wisdom and the integration and all the things. I think that's the goal for all of us. Like we want to get there. And yes, we'll get there. It's not a place we go to stay because as we know, this is a journey of growth and evolution. That's what life is. But we can, when we get to that point where we can really embody the sage, then we go into all these other seasons, all these other archetypes with a totally different perspective, a totally different outlook. And so when we can get to that point where we can really recognize ourselves in that phase of the sage, that archetype of the sage, everything shifts. And so the other reason I encourage you to go through the full series is for you to get all 5 parts here and to really listen to that last one of the sage and how that can really shift things. And when we can go into that part or that season, that archetype fully resourced and what it looks like to come out on the other side of that. So like going from that sage back to maybe another layer of the seeker or the warrior. It's a totally different experience physically, mentally, emotionally. just with these layers of depth that you didn't have before. So go to the show notes below, go find the full series, and there's more to come with this. I feel like there's more here outside of this series. So who knows what I'll do with it next, but I just feel like there's more because I love talking about this. I find giving the words and the language to where you are, the season of becoming that you're in is so empowering, and it helps us to be able to approach our journey, our becoming in a much more resource and empowered way. So I hope this serves you, and I can't wait to see you inside the full series so you can go through all of these and really support yourself in a new way. And for those of you who are followers of the podcast, I will see you next time.